Press Today, a 30-minute daily radio program that provides a wide range of general and important news, published in local and international gazettes, featuring a collection of sports, business, health, science, and technology news, and covering the latest developments in these various arenas to keep listeners aware of the major events in the world. Highlighting the program is a segment called This Day in History that spotlights the most significant historical events that took place on this day. The Press Today will be broadcast on 93.3 FM Radio Kuwait and 966 on the AM band.
It is now 9:30 a.m. in the state of Kuwait. Good morning and welcome to Press Today, coming to you live from Radio Kuwait. I'm your host, Hessa Khalid, and these are your top stories from around the globe. Starting with our main headlines, Kuwait Prime Minister says COVID vaccination rate to 70% by end of September. Taliban take 10th provincial capital as Ghazni falls, and Ethiopia rebels from alliance against government. Starting with QNA News Agency, His Highness the Prime Minister Sheikh Sabah Khalid Al-Hamid Al-Sabah on Thursday said that by the end of September of 2021, Kuwait's COVID-19 vaccination rate is hoped to reach 70%. His Highness the Prime Minister, during an open dialogue with KU 2020 to 2021 honour students at Sabah Al-Salim University City, that some 2.6 million of the population is vaccinated, and by the end of September, we will reach 70%. Earlier this month, the Ministry of Health announced that more than 2.5 million citizens and residents of Kuwait were vaccinated. From Khalij Times, Kuwait's cabinet expressed deep concerns about the dangerous consequences of the threats to security and safety of maritime navigation in waters leading to the Arabian Gulf and waters surrounding the Sea of Oman and the Sea of Arabia. The cabinet, under the chairmanship of His Highness the Prime Minister Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamid Al-Sabah, also voiced backing to the presidential statement issued by the United Nations Security Council on August 9th on the importance of ensuring maritime safety and safeguarding oceans' legitimate use. From Gulf Times, Lebanon's Prime Minister Najib Mikati called a decision by the central bank to end subsidies to fuel products illegal and called for an emergency cabinet meeting to discuss the move. The announcement by the central bank is likely to send prices soaring in a country already in the throes of an unprecedented economic crisis. The move had been anticipated for months as the bank's reserves dry up, but on Thursday, politicians distanced themselves and blamed the central bank governor, Ra'ad Salama. From Arab Times, Sudan will hand long-time ruler Omar al-Bashir to the International Criminal Court along with two other officials wanted over the Darfur conflict. Al-Bashir has been wanted by the Hague-based ICC for more than 10 years over charges of genocide. The United Nations says 300,000 people were killed and 2.5 million displaced in the Darfur conflict, which erupted in the vast western region in the year 2003. From New York Times, the Chinese government has unveiled a 5-year plan outlining tighter regulation of much of its economy. It says new rules will be introduced covering areas including national security, technology and monopolies in the world's second largest economy. The plan comes soon after Beijing started targeting the technology and education industries. The 10-point plan, which runs to the end of 2025, was released jointly by China's State Council and the Communist Party's Central Committee. Asia News reports the Australian capital Canberra is going into a snap 1-week lockdown after recording its first case of COVID-19 in more than a year. The lockdown was called for the whole of the Australian Capital Territory, home to around 400,000 people, because authorities do not know how the infected person caught the virus. Residents will only be able to leave home for essential reasons. Queues were reported at supermarkets as the lockdown approaches. From South Asian News, the Taliban have taken the strategically important city of Ghazni, the 10th provincial capital, to fall to the militants in less than a week. Afghan security forces arrested Ghazni's governor and his deputy after they fled the city. Ghazni is one of the major Kabul-Kandahar motorway linking militant strongholds in the south of the capital, Kabul. Taking the city is thought to increase the likelihood that the Taliban could eventually aim to take Kabul itself. From Euronews, Brussels has criticized Poland after members of parliament passed a controversial law on media ownership that its critiques say is a threat to press freedom. The law, which needs the approval of the Senate and Poland's president, would prevent non-European owners from having a controlling stake in Polish media companies. From Mail Online, Denmark has become the first country in the European Union to offer residency to those it has worked with in Afghanistan. The offer is open to Afghan nationals that have worked at the Danish embassy in Kabul and or as interpreters with the country's troops. It comes as Taliban insurgents make swift gains in the country, sparking security concerns and the prospect of them taking power. Le Monde reports the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis said the country has reason for optimism after managing to contain the bulk of the wildfires that have ravaged several regions over the past fortnight. However, he warned nonetheless that the danger of a resurgence remains high during a particularly hot and dry summer, adding they are in the middle of the month of August and they still have difficult days ahead of them. From The Guardian, police in Turkey have arrested dozens of people in connection with a series of attacks on homes and businesses owned by Syrian nationals. Hundreds of people took to the streets of the capital, Ankara, chanting anti-Syrian slogans amid intensifying discourse. Stones were thrown at Syrian refugees' home in the 13thAug neighborhood, while some shops were also ransacked. Ankara police said 76 suspects were taken into custody, suspected of either being involved in the attacks or of sharing provocative social media postings that allegedly helped stoke the mob's anger. From African news, Zambians were voting for a new leader with long queues pointing to a high turnout in an election showdown between President Edgar Lungu and main opposition rival Hakainde Hichilema that looks too tight to call. The two rivals, who voted at different stations hours apart, were both confident of winning the vote, and the close contest raised the possibility of a runoff. Ethiopia's rebel Oromo Liberation Army, or OLA, says it has a military alliance with Tigray forces from the north of the country to fight the government. The Tigray People's Liberation Front has not made a statement on the pact, but a spokesperson for the group confirmed the agreement to the Bloomberg news agency. The government designated both groups as terror organizations in May. And from Reuters, Haiti's elections have been postponed to November 7th, according to local media on Wednesday, following the killing last month of President Jovenel Moise, which plunged the country into political turmoil. Documents apparently issued by the government that were circulated on social media disclosed the postponement to the presidential and legislative elections, as well as a constitutional referendum, which had previously been scheduled for September 26. Haiti's Electoral Council did not immediately reply to requests for comments. From the Associated Press, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is planning to call a snap election for September 20th and intends to make the formal announcement this coming Sunday. Trudeau aides have said for months that the ruling Liberals would push for a vote before the end of 2021, 2 years ahead of schedule. Trudeau only has a minority government and relies on opposition parties to push through legislation. From USA Today, United States fire officials said an enormous wildfire raging across Northern California for nearly a month has burned down another 550 homes, becoming one of the most destructive in state history. The Dixie Fire is the second largest in state history. Crews had contained only 30% of the blaze. Temperatures were expected to cross over 37.8 degrees Celsius in coming days as a high-pressure weather system described by forecasters as a heat dome backs the Pacific Northwest. From CBC News, United States Health Secretary Javier Becerra announced that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has mandated its healthcare workforce to get vaccinated against COVID-19. According to an HHS statement, staff at the Indian Health Service focused on American Indians and National Institutes will be impacted by this decision. More of today's headlines. UK economy rebounds as COVID restrictions ease. TikTok hopes to help teenagers work, rest and sleep. And blockbusters on Thodupuzha Square big screen aim to woo film fans. In our business news, shares in WW International, formerly known as Weight Watchers, dived 25% after the firm said people were putting diets on hold after lockdown. The weight loss firm, which is backed by talk show host Oprah Winfrey, had 4.9 million subscribers at the end of June, down from 5 million last year. Boss Mindy Grossman said part of this was a seasonal effect. Also in business, the United Kingdom economy grew by 4.8% between April and June, according to official figures, as most businesses emerged from lockdown. Data from the Office for National Statistics showed that the expansion in gross domestic product was fueled by retail, restaurants and hotels. Education also boosted the economy as schools reopened in second quarter. In our science news, scientists and experts said low-income countries are struggling to protect themselves against climate change. Organizations representing 90 countries say that their plans to prevent damage have already been outpaced by climate-induced disasters, which are intensifying and happening more regularly. Also in science, recent heat waves and wildfires around the world have caused alarm, with warnings that parts of Europe and North America could be experiencing the worst fire season ever. Parts of the western U.S. have seen record-breaking temperatures this year, which, along with severe drought conditions, have triggered a series of major wildfires. In our medical news from ABC News, a medical study shows that some people have been eating less red meat and experiencing more iron deficiency anemia. Researchers also said that there is a decrease in naturally present iron levels in beef and other animal proteins, as well as the plant-based foods they consume. Researchers said it is the decreases in iron levels in the food we're eating that's playing the largest role in the increase in iron deficiency anemia. From CBC News, chances are the coronavirus variant known as Epsilon might not be on your radar, but scientists sure are watching it. First discovered in California last December, it's now spreading in Pakistan. An allergist and immunologist with the Allergy and Asthma Network in New York City, Dr. Purvi Parekh, said this is worrisome as it is more transmissible than original strains of the virus. In our technology news, Facebook has removed hundreds of accounts which it says were involved in anti-vax disinformation campaigns operated from Russia. The company said the network of accounts targeted India, Latin America and the United States. It added they attempted to recruit influencers to false claims to undermine public confidence in